Good morning.
Good morning.
Before I begin with our second reading from the Gospel of Luke, let me just say a few words of many thanks for gratitude for being in this beautiful place. Pastor Martha asked me if it looked like Virginia. Well, in the part of Virginia that I most recently lived, it does, because of the rolling hills and the river and everything. And as I drove up yesterday, and the sun was just kind of coming up over the hill, or coming down over the hills, it reminded me of God, of what we're reading today, of God's presence with us in Jesus Christ, and God's gift of the Holy Spirit to us. So I am thankful to be here as the interprestory executive. It's a lot of words in one short phrase. But basically, I'm here to serve with you to fulfill the mission of Jesus Christ in this area and help build up churches in our area together. And so I want you to know, for both Lutherans and Presbyterians all gathered as one, that it's a wonderful place to be in ministry and in mission together. So thank you for having me up here this Sunday. Feel free to ask Pastor Martha if there's something I can do, and I'll be glad to respond. Or my numbers are in, I think, they're on the Parish website. So, again, thank you. Let's go to Luke's Gospel. Luke chapter 24, verses 44 through 53. And if for some reason my voice gets low, just raise your hand if you can't hear me, okay? And I will try to speak up much better. Then Jesus said to them, "These are my words, which I spoke to you while I was standing with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled." Then he opened their minds to understand the Scriptures and said to them, "Thus it is written, that the Christ should suffer and on the third day rise from the dead, and that repentance and forgiveness of sins should be preached in his name to all nations, beginning from Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things. And behold, I send the promise of my Father upon you. But stay in the city until you are clothed with power from on high." Then he led them out as far as Bethany, and lifting up his hands, he blessed them. And while he blessed them, he parted from them and was carried up into heaven. And they returned to Jerusalem with great joy, and were continually in the temple blessing God. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Can you picture it there on that hill? Jesus is standing among his disciples who think they know him, but lost all ability to understand it in some ways at the resurrection. What do you imagine happened there? I can remember when I was in Sunday school. It was right at the time of the first moon launch. And I can remember going to church one Sunday morning and studying the Ascension. And I had in my image that moon launch of the moon, the rocket shooting up into space with that capsule attached to it that was going to land on the moon. That's what I had in my head about Jesus going up in the sky. And it kind of stuck with me for a while. I don't know what images we have of the Ascension. But can you prove it historically that that happened? In the last probably 100 and some years in the church, there has been what's been called the search for the historical Jesus. And as we have become more scientific in our understanding and our culture, we as faithful Christians often choose to ask questions about things that, do they really matter about how he got to heaven? Was he in a spaceship, or was he lifted up like a helium balloon? Or did the heavens part? We search for these answers and this concrete kind of witness that the disciples wanted every step of the way as well. And so these outrageous and beyond belief kinds of stories in the Bible, we search for their reality in modern day science and proof orientation that Jesus was actually here. And many think that this historical search for Jesus, the actual history of what happened to Jesus on earth, many think that it's a way to counter the scientific advances of our world and try to fit in our faith with that advancement. Maybe a kind of cleaning out of the cobwebs of the mind in our faith. But we got to remember, this is a story of the church, not of science. It's a story not for the den with your TV on and the moon rocket going up in the air, but it's a story of faith. A story of faith in that if you had been there with your camcorder and cell phone recorder, who knows what you have recorded at that time as Jesus went to be with his Father. And I love history. I don't know about you, but one of my favorite channels on TV is the History Channel. I love to go to movies like, or TV shows like Wolf Hall, Victoria, Ben-Hur, all those kind of things that tell the story of our history. But I've gotten to the place where I understand that it's not a preacher's job to take the Bible's mysterious stories and make sense of them, to get rid of the strangeness or the wildness or the unpredictability. If a story is mysterious, then the church needs to practice being mystified. Not jump as quickly as possible to some explanation that removes all the shadows as well as the light. I don't dismiss the concerns, but in my view, we lose sight of the power of faith if we spend our time wondering about the how of the ascension, whether Jesus rose into the sky like a helium balloon, and the why of the ascension. So our focus will be to look at the gift in the story. What is the gift in this story for us? There is a story from the Nez Perce Indians of eastern Washington and western Idaho. It's the story of two coyotes. Two coyotes went up the river and they came to a big ledge. From there they saw the people living below near the river. And the two friends said to each other, "You go ahead." "No, you go." And for a long time they argued back and forth. And then one said, "Well, you go first. They will see you and they will say, 'The coyote is going on the trail.'" "I'm not a coyote," said the second coyote. "I'm not a coyote." "But you're the same as I am," the first coyote said. We're the same in every way, and we're both coyotes. No, the second coyote said, and they argued again. Then the second coyote said, you go first. They were on the ridge that the people could below see, so the first coyote walked down the ledge. He went over the small ridge, and the people said to each other, that coyote is going upstream. And they came out and watched the coyote going. See, the first coyote called back to his friend. What did they say? They called me coyote. You come too. And they're going to say the same thing to you. You are a coyote. They won't, said the second coyote. But all right, I'll go. And he slowly started walking on the trail. And when the people saw the second coyote, they said, another one. See, the second coyote said, I'm not a coyote, I'm another one. Like this story of two coyotes. The story of Jesus' ascension contains things we only see if we stop assuming, like the historians did, that we know what we're going to find. We don't celebrate this Ascension Day. It's not usually a huge event on our calendars like Easter or Christmas. We don't celebrate because it's 40 days just after Easter, and that's what we're supposed to do. We don't celebrate the Ascension because the Creed says Jesus rose into heaven to sit on the right hand of God, although a coyote is a coyote. We celebrate the Ascension because we're no different. We're no different from the early church, who gathered around this story from the beginning to hear what they needed to hear. The news that they were going to receive power. And perhaps even more importantly, we celebrate this day to be reminded that we have no power of our own and never have. It's a hard thing to be reminded of. There the disciples were, a fragile little community, trying to find their way, a little bewildered, watching their Lord leave them. But they aren't distraught and sad. When it's finally, or maybe not finally, all over, they're worshiping with joy. With joy. You see, they had an advantage over us. They had no power of their own in that place and that time. Any power they would have ever known would be given to them by the Spirit. And they aren't even told when or how. Someone in the group does ask the practical question. Someone in the group always asks that practical question, in my experience. But someone asks it. He or she asks Jesus, are you going to restore the kingdom of Israel now? It's not a faith question, it's a political question. It's a question you ask when your candidate comes out on top and you want to know when the platform is going to be implemented. It's the wrong question, though. It's the wrong question to be asking. But it is always all right to ask the wrong question with Jesus, I've discovered. God knows the answer, but we don't get to. Jesus says, stop worrying about having things the way you want them and wait for something else, a power you have never known that is coming. A gift is on its way. Wait for it. We live in an era and in a nation which is deluded by the notion that we have all the power, that everything is up to us. To be in church, to join a church, is to stand up and laugh at that idea. And it's okay. It's okay to laugh and say, I don't have the power, but I will receive the power. Maybe to join a church on Ascension Day is a good thing. The perfect way to welcome folks into a congregation of a journey of faith from the beginning of that power. Whenever people gather around the baptismal font, we are publicly proclaiming that we are relying on a power beyond ourselves that we could ever understand. And that we believe in a God whose love and strength sustains all things. All things. In the Presbyterian Book of Order, the thing that Presbyterians kind of carry next to the Bible, are these words. All ministry in the church is a gift from Jesus Christ. Members and officers alike are all under the mandate of Christ, who is chief minister of all. Jesus' ministry is the basis of all of our ministries. The ministry of the one who came not to be served, but to serve. And that is our calling. That is our gift. One of my pastor friends in the place where I previously served had shared with me a story about a couple who came to church to visit and asked about the possibility of joining. He was excited about talking with this young couple with their two younger children. And then he felt the conversation turn into an interview. The couple wanted to know just what Second Presbyterian Church was going to do for them and for their children. And the pastor brought them to sudden silence by asking, what are you planning to do for Second Presbyterian Church? Soon they left, never to be seen again. All ministry, including church membership, is a gift from Jesus Christ. We don't do it on our own. We can't. Without the gift, without the empowering spirit that Jesus promised to the disciples at his ascension, we can do nothing. We can make no claim, and nothing that we try to do that is all our idea and not God's can finally ever prosper. You see, many of our projects and many of the things that we think we're doing, unless they're grounded in that power, they matter not. If something is not a work of the Spirit, it will die. It will die when our energy or our resources to make it happen dies. But that's not the gift that God has given us. The work of the Spirit of God never comes to an end, whether that is within our hearts or as our hands and feet expressed in the world. God will accomplish what God sets out to do, and will make use of us and our witness all along that way. You see, this day, this Ascension Day, is the day to remember that it's the Spirit at work in the church that makes all manner of impossible things possible. Things like the woman who knew she couldn't face it when her husband, when her husband became critically and terminally ill, who woke each morning for months waiting to fall apart and disappear. But she didn't. She survived and met what came each day, and not only that, now she looks back, she knows she didn't do it alone, because facing her husband's death was not something she could possibly have done by herself. It is by the power of the Spirit of God that folks like you and millions of others around this region, or thousands of others around this area of our country, can go each day in facing what the storms have brought. It is only by the power of Christ that we can pick up, rebuild, and move on in God's love. By the power of the Spirit, a Mexican priest took communion to the people of a small town whose church was overrun with soldiers. They shot at anyone who came near, but the priest came forward to enter the church, and the police shot at his feet. And overcome with fear, he started to leave. But then he stopped, remembering the power that God had given him, and came back and moved toward the church as a town watch. And with courage, his courage, which was not alone, inspired others to follow and step beside him until there was a collection of people moving toward the church. And the soldiers dropped their guns and let the people in. It is only by God's power that we can proclaim his love and his witness around the world. And so, let us join together in affirming that that power is now and among us. You see, God makes things possible out of the impossible. God gives us the gift of power of the Spirit every day of our lives. Amen.
Amen.